So in a lot of churches we're working with, we do work with the big churches, but it's often the medium and smaller churches that need our help more specifically. And I get this question a lot. They just say, man, we can't afford a full-time tech director and worship leader and kids pastor and lead pastor and all those things. Sometimes they can't afford almost any staff. And they're like, can we still have great services? And I'd say by all means, I think you can have great services.
Yes, you absolutely can. In fact, if you are a small to medium-sized church, I don't know why you really would need to have a sound guy on staff or a tech director.
Right.
Because it's not like, if you're set up for success, then what really needs to happen is what I would probably say to something like that.
Yeah. We've worked with some smaller churches who I kind of admire. They don't have staff.
Oh.
There's actually one church that I work with where I don't think anybody is paid staff. I think the entire, including the lead pastor, which is really uncommon. I personally think it's really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. Total personal thing there. He's bivocational. He has a full-time job, and then he pastors the church on his off time.
Sure.
And the worship leaders are the same way. And then what they do pay for in that church is they pay for help with their tech.
Yeah.
And I thought that's a neat way to do it because, and it's all about priorities and what you're doing. But if you're not spending all the money on staff in that sense, in traditional like pastoral staff, then it's easier to spend money. Like we have a tech subscription where we mix at a church every Sunday, or they have a tech guy who runs their live stream and their pro presenter and all that stuff, which kind of makes sense. Those might be harder roles to find a volunteer for in a smaller church.
Yeah.
Whereas in a larger church, it's kind of the opposite. You have more money for staff, but maybe you have to find more volunteers to run your tech positions. And I think in either case, that can be really cool, but getting creative can help. But I'd say more importantly than anything, whether you're paying the person as a staff member or they're a volunteer, I think who you get to help matters a lot.
Sure.
Wouldn't that be your experience?
Yeah, and I'd say, along those lines, like the church that I go to,
right?
Which I can name drop because it's my church and I can say it. So that's Refuge Church.
Oh boy.
Which they started. It depends on when this airs.
A couple years ago. Or?
But it was the very beginning of what are we in 2023?
It was 2022.
2022. The beginning of 2022. So they meet in a middle school. They set up each week.
Yeah, they don't have like a church office or anything, do they?
No, and so there's a lot of volunteers, all that stuff, and no tech director,
right,
at all. But man, they've got it dialed in. They have they got their sound system, they've got their tracks, they've got their lyrics. Everything is MIDI based. So when on a foot pedal, so when the worship leader hits it, the first song or whatever, it sends all the information to the lyrics. The lyrics go in order.
Yeah.
The track, plays and all this kind of stuff. And these folks are not techie people.
No, what I love about that story is the pastor figured that out on his own.
Yeah. So I asked him, I asked him one day, I was like, Logan, how did you figure that? He goes, well, me and Joe, we watched a couple of YouTube videos.
Yeah.
It took 2 days and, just kind of basically did what they told us to do. And lo and behold,
so
here it is.
I don't mean to sound too confrontational, but we're talking about two part-time guys figured out how to do what a lot of churches pay a 40-hour-a-week full-time tech director to do.
Not only that, but like they're not... Logan's the main pastor. And then Joe is the worship leader who knows how to play guitar and sing.
Yeah, they're not really techie guys.
Neither one of these guys are like, tech people.
Yeah.
But I think what the more important thing is just have some common sense.
Yeah.
And have the
research.
mindset to troubleshoot something, decide what you want to do. And then here's the deal. We live in an age where everything is out there on the internet. You can figure this kind of stuff out. Somebody's already figured it out. We're not reinventing the wheel when it comes to church production at all.
Especially that more technical stuff like how to MIDI control your tracks to your pro presenter. Like that's something you could pay someone to come in and set up for you. But that one's pretty straightforward. Now, what I do love about Refuge is when they do hit something that they're like, this is out of our wheelhouse, they call us up.
Yeah.
In fact, that's how we first met these guys, is they got sold the online special audio gear, because they were a church plant, and this online store was like, here you go, here's all the gear you need.
Boom.
Literally shipped it to them, and they're like, what do we do with this?
So they called another church plant, and they're like, oh, you got to call Sound and Church. So they called us. I went out on their first Sunday before their launch. Like it was, they could only meet on Sundays.
Right.
So I went their first Sunday to.
Got
they're
it all
like,
set up.
we are so glad you're here. Here's a pile of gear.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, cool. So we made something, and then they're like, oh my gosh, can we hire you for the first month? And it was like, yeah. Went through the first month. Can we hire you for the second month? Yeah, okay. Can we hire you like once a month to come in? And
yeah, because at that point their team had started to pick up on what Stuart was showing them.
Yeah.
And like they know how to set up the gear.
Yep.
They know how to plug it in. Their pastor's super organized, so he like color codes everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you only go in every couple months just to kind of check things out.
Well, toward the end of the year, I was talking to my wife. I'm like, I really like these people a lot.
Well, yeah, it became your church.
And so we decided to go there. And they still pay me to come in on certain like
for
Easter
special events
and like stuff like that. But
their
man,
volunteers do a great job.
You should see the place. They can have the entire thing. Everything, not just audio, but like the entire in like an hour.
Yeah, it floors me because every now and then I get invited to guest worship lead there. And so I don't know the system. I never was part of setting it up. Stuart did that. But I'll show up as the worship leader, and it's fun to watch their whole team. And within an hour, they're like, hey, we're ready for rehearsal. And I'm like,
and these are just average people.
Yeah, normal, not techie people.
Yeah.
And so I think it all comes down to how you train them and what they know how to do.